Kia ora, Roscoe. Cheers for jumping on, man.
Cheers, thanks for having me.
You've also brought a nice Roady coffee travel mug for me, so much appreciated. We got that on the table for a bit of product placement, which is nice.
Love it. Yeah, no, the Camelback's pretty decent stuff. Does the job, eh?
Yeah, man, it will do the job nicely. So before we kick into things, do you mind just introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. Kia ora, I'm Roscoe. I'm the founder of Roady. We make it easy for travellers to access local knowledge and plan epic trips around New Zealand. We launched an app about a year ago now. Well, a year ago, 3 weeks-ish to the day.
Happy anniversary.
Cheers, yeah. No, it's gone pretty quickly. And I guess, yeah, one of the things I'm probably most proud of that is that we've facilitated in over 75,000 adventures, getting people out and about around NZ.
That's absolutely incredible, man. And prior to having you on the podcast, I downloaded the app, and like the amount of opportunities there are in New Zealand is just absolutely incredible. So keen to sort of unpack how really just how the app came to fruition. But really keen first to start on your journey. And were you always quite entrepreneurial? Were you always that kid like selling stuff growing up, sort of Gary V styles, or what's your road into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I guess there were some signs of it early on with my old man. So he's got a small car business and, buys and sells cars. He came from a car yard background and then basically started his own business. And that was kind of my first job, I guess, sort of working from him and learning the basics of, everything that you need to do in a small business. So it was photography, taking photos of cars, selling the cars, doing the paperwork, actually doing the sales. And yeah, that sort of led me down the path of, I guess, buying and selling a few of my own when I was going through uni to sort of help pay my way through uni and that sort of thing. So yeah, that was a little sort of taste to it. But then my first, I guess, career was actually as a PE teacher. So I was teaching PE and outdoor ed at secondary school before starting Roady.
Wow.
I actually heard one of your previous guests, Paul from Moor Road, and
yes.
I was like, man, there's a few similarities here. I think he was doing some car things
too. He was
teaching as well.
Yep.
So I was like, oh shit, yeah, pretty interesting.
That's so funny. Yeah, Paul, founder of Moor Road, he was an economic teacher, I think, at Wellington High School. So
yeah,
that's super cool. And how long were you working as a PE teacher, and what school were you working at?
I was working probably about a year and a half. Started in like a fixed term gig and then dropped into relief. I was at Hutt Valley High, which is actually the school that I went to myself.
That's awesome.
But yeah, teaching was a great profession to, I guess, go down the entrepreneurial path because I was just able to do 4 days relief, 3 days relief, 2 days, and then sort of get out of there and sort of, I guess, scale up and down based on what was required and how much money I had coming in from Roady. And
that's really cool. That's awesome, man. And so you started the idea with Roady while you're still a PE teacher, is that right? Or I did read something where you were doing almost like private tours around Tongariro.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where the idea sort of came to fruition?
So I got back from the UK and, like a lot of Kiwis, I sort of traveled all across Europe, but barely even seen the South Island. So I kind of came back here and wanted to do a bit more travel myself around NZ. And when it came to that whole planning phase, I just realized how difficult it was to access the information I was after. You're searching on Google, you're doing all the classics, you're scrolling Instagram, but you get the pretty pictures, but not the supporting information. And I noticed it was a really sort of fragmented way of organizing travel. So I basically set off. I was traveling around the South Island and I just started documenting my travels online. Like I made this account called Roady and started posting up photos and videos from what I was up to. And I think the thing that at the time I was doing a little bit differently was giving people really detailed information on how to get to the swimming hole or how to go to this waterfall. And at the time, Instagram was like a very look at me platform, and it would just be a cool photo with nothing to sort of really support or help other people get there. So I think that's why those accounts seem to get a bit of traction early, and then that kind of got me thinking, okay, I've got something here, people are liking what we're putting out, how can I monetize this? And our first product, as you mentioned, was tours. So it was like self-drive tours. So you'd arrive in Auckland, I'd have a car waiting for you, all your accommodation booked, and you'd have a ready-to-go itinerary, a road trip on a plate, basically just ready to rumble.
That's awesome.
So that was ticking along nicely, leading into COVID, and COVID put a pretty big end to that because 90% of our business, 95% was international. So that was a real back to the drawing board for me. And yeah, it was a great chance to kind of reflect on what we were doing. And while it was going well and I was getting some good numbers through, the process of putting together these tours was so manual. Like it was me behind the scenes making these bookings and they'd tell me they like golf, so I'd book them in at all the best golf courses or whatever. It was very customized. So it got me thinking, how can I scale this up and I guess create something that takes that sort of manpower out? And that's what led me down the path of the idea of the app. It's like, well, I've got all these great recommendations, all these places, let's put them on an app and let the traveler use that app as a tool to plan for themselves.
That's amazing. That's awesome. It's such a cool opportunity, which has come from COVID, obviously running basically like a tourism business, right? And then having the brakes put on, that would have been fucking scary.
Yeah.
And when you're putting on these tours around New Zealand, are you just like basically setting where they're going to go and basing that itinerary, or are you going? You're not going with them as like a tour guide, are you?
So we're talking about the tours, not the
the tours.
No, I wasn't going with them. They were predominantly. Well, sorry, they were all self-drive, so they were all turn up. But what you're referring to, the Tongariro, was another sort of COVID project before the app, actually. So pretty much before the app, I was trialing a bunch of things, and one of the things I was trialing was these group tours. So I took a group of, it must have been about 25-ish to do the Tongariro crossing in winter, and we took another group out to like Castle Point, and I was trialing these like weekend tours, and they were awesome. Like they were such good fun. I sold out all of them, but it just made me realize pretty quickly, same issue, the whole scalable thing, and the demographic I was targeting was like 20 to 35 that don't quite have the same, income maybe. So I just realized that the amount of tours I'd have to run to be profitable and the operations required was going to be really, really difficult.
Yeah. And how did you come up with the balls to basically leave having a steady income as a PE teacher and then transfer and be like, hey, I want to give this business stuff a shot?
To be honest, I think I never really thought that teaching was going to be the profession. I did like a 3-year sport and exercise degree. Didn't want to leave uni, loved my sport. I knew I was going to go over to England and play a bit of cricket. I was like, grab teaching. I might be able to do some teaching over there. I think I ended up teaching 2 days the whole time I was in the UK.
True.
So then I came back and I was teaching, and nothing against teaching. I loved it. I loved teaching outdoor ed, but I think I always knew I wanted to start something for myself. And then, as I was saying, like it was a great profession to be able to drop down. So I wasn't like, I'm going to go all in and just leave my income. I kind of only made that jump once I knew I was pretty safe, pretty covered.
Yeah, that makes sense. And where do you, like, if someone's got an idea, right, where do you start to turning an idea into an app? And let alone turning that into a functional business model. Like, what are the steps to actually building an app in New Zealand?
Yeah, the app things was, I guess, like, because I had the idea for the app for ages, but I just never really backed myself because I've got no technical background or development background. So that the idea for the app, funnily enough, came from Pokemon Go. I noticed a bunch of people getting addicted going around New Zealand and capturing these
forgot
Pokemon.
about that, eh? That was such a crazy app. People were just like, you'd kind of see them like they were scanning for gold, just like looking around, and you'd be like, what are you doing? Like, I've got to find like Pokemons.
Yeah, I was like, well, this is actually getting people out of the house. Like people are going like out of the house to go to these places, and I was like, well, imagine if instead of capturing these Pokemon, we can encourage people to go and tick off these bucket list travel experiences around NZ. So that's kind of was the idea. But as I say, it was just an idea because I didn't have that ability to sort of think I could take it to the next level. I guess I found Creative HQ. So they're a crew in Wellington that basically make it. They help founders turn their ideas into real world solutions, and nothing but positive things to say about them. So when COVID hit, I found them, and I pretty much spent 4 months just lying on beanbags trying to think of my next move. And then there was a tourism accelerator, which is a 4-month really focused thing, and they were accepting 6 companies that wanted to make tourism better in NZ. And I think on the last day, I was just like, I'm just going to go for it. And I pitched the idea of the app. At that stage, it was just myself and the company. I brought out a couple of other people that were involved and just went all in on this idea.
Awesome.
Managed to get in, and then basically spent the next 4 months sort of just honing in on this idea. I was validating it with people. I was doing mock-ups and running tests with people, and I got to the end of the 4 months and I had pretty much a prototype ready to rumble and ready for someone to develop it. And then off the back of that, I pitched and raised a little bit of investment through Angel HQ, who are an investment club in Wellington, and was able to essentially fund the initial build of the MVP.
That's awesome, bro. That's huge. What's it like when you're pitching to investors for like startup capital to launch your idea? Did you have, yeah, what's the sort of process? Is it really like what you see on Dragon's Den where you're like just absolutely going for it and they can be quite ruthless? Like what were you presenting them?
Yeah, it is in some ways, and like I know so much more now than I did 2 years ago when I first pitched, because that was just a completely new world for me at the time. But yeah, I mean, to paint the picture, like off the back of the accelerator, I was probably pitching to 50 odd people in a room, and you do like a 10-minute pitch followed by 5 minutes of Q&As, and they're grilling you on
Getting grilled.
yeah,
Question time.
bits and pieces. And at that stage it was I was pitching an idea. Like, I didn't have any traction. The only traction I had was I had this engaged audience, so I had some credibility there, and I had this idea that how I was going to execute it. But other than that, that was, I guess, trying to back me. So I was learning about what investors want to hear, and not lying to them or not saying anything that wasn't true. But it's a different way of talking. You got to think what they're seeing value in versus what I might be seeing value in is a little bit different. So yeah, and then I mean, I've raised a little bit of capital since then. I certainly know a lot more now, but raising capital at the moment seems to be 10 times more difficult now, when I've got a lot more traction than it was back then. But that's just sort of where the climate's at the moment.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's the current New Zealand like economic position, and things are sort of entering a bit of a downturn at the moment?
Yeah, I think people are just a little bit more cautious with their money, and I'm seeing that across the board with like other startups that I'm good mates with and stuff, and really struggling to raise. So yeah, it's challenging, but I guess it's made me just want to try and get to profitable as soon as possible and not relying on investment capital.
What would be your like top 2 biggest pieces of advice for people listening who might have a business at the moment and at that position where they're starting to raise some capital, looking into investors? What would your top 2 pieces of advice be for them?
I think you have to have a really clear reason why you're wanting to raise. I think there's this big thing with startups that it's just like, I'm going to raise, we're going to scale quickly, we're going to grow. But you have to really have a clear reason and what that money's going to do and help you achieve. Because there is such a big thing, and I think it's almost a bit dangerous with startups and this whole like Silicon Valley vibe, where it's just like, scale quickly, hire heaps of people, become the next unicorn, where actually I think it's like, let's just get to break even and be profitable and focus on that and build a sustainable business first, and then take the capital to take you to the next level. But then, yeah, I guess the other piece of advice would probably be just to, I guess, you got to be careful who you're taking money from, and you're just as much interviewing them as they're interviewing you in a way. Like they want to find out everything about the business, but you don't want money with baggage. So I guess it's about trying to bring on investors that can actually add value to the company. Like a lot of my investors I've got a couple that are on the board now and like mentors and stuff, and they're actually adding value, not just capital, to the company. So I think, to me, that's really important.
Yeah, that's huge, man. Yeah, I guess you don't want to sign up and, you got heaps of hoops you have to potentially jump through, or responsibilities that you owe to different shareholders, which might sort of take you away from the mission and what you're trying to achieve.
For sure, yeah. And it does like take more time, like, investor reports that go out quarterly and communicating with investors. So you need to make sure that you've got the right people that are going to help grow you, not just with the funds that they're putting in behind it.
Yeah, that's massive, man. And where Roady is now, like, how are you guys currently positioned? How big is the team? And what are you guys focusing on?
Yeah, so we've got 6 on our team, 5 full-timers, 1 contractor, and then a couple on the board. So we're predominantly based in Wellington, got an office in Wellington, and then we've got 1 remote in Kaikoura. At the moment, we are focused on, I guess, changing slightly the revenue model for the app. We're looking at integrating bookings. So at the moment, the app's an inspiration tool that you're finding all these cool things, you're making bucket lists and you're ticking them off. We want to take it to the next level and basically enable bookings where you can book in that bungee jump or book in that whitewater rafting tour inside the app.
Nice.
So we're working on that at the moment. We're trying to find like the best sort of partner to partner with to enable those bookings. So there's a number of different solutions where you can get a range of experiences that you can like integrate with an API or white label. So we're working out who the best one is for us there. And then I guess the next focus is on Australia. So we want to get across the ditch, and we're hoping to launch into Australia next year.
Epic, bro. That's huge. That is absolutely massive. So it's basically turning into like a one-stop shop for all of your sort of travel needs when it comes to first visiting New Zealand. Or what I really like about it too is the sort of domestic focus as well, because I feel like so many Kiwis, we're so fast to jump over and do like an OE over to Europe. I've got like basically every man and their dog is over in Europe for like Euro summer at the moment. And then you look at all these people and you're like, shit, how many of you guys have actually explored our backyard first? Because there is so much to see and so much to do, eh?
For sure, yeah. And I think, that's a big thing we're trying to promote. It's that, a lot of people do the same holiday every year, or, go to Queenstown
yeah, the standard.
once a year or whatever. Nothing against Queenstown. But, we're trying to encourage people to consider places that they wouldn't have previously considered, and, get out there and I guess disperse the travelers as well. Like, a lot of places in NZ have been impacted heavily by COVID and need some love. A lot of places are getting overrun because they've got too much tourism. So we're really just trying to encourage people to explore far and wide, and get out and about. Getting outdoors, as we know, is good for the soul. And
totally. Yeah. You must have so many like hidden gem places which are kind of undiscovered that are sitting on the Roady app. So for people listening, where are some of like the best hidden gems for like a Roady experience in NZ?
Oh, so difficult. But I mean, a couple of my top spots and recommendations would be Mount Stokes in Marlborough. So I'd compare it to a Roy's Peak. Everyone knows of Roy's Peak, but not a lot of people know Mount Stokes. And I'm going to throw it out there that it's a better hike, more interesting hike.
Mount Stokes, that rings a bell. I might have, because I did Outward Bound back when I was like 17, 18. I think I might have done it during Outward Bound.
Oh yeah. Highest point in the Marlborough Sound. So you're looking down over the
that's the one. Yeah. I'll have to double check to confirm, but that name definitely rings a bell, eh?
Yeah, it's awesome. We had such a cool mission up there. We wanted to get up for sunrise, so we left it at 4 a.m. and it was after Marlborough had been smashed by the storms. So we're kind of bush bashing a little bit. The track wasn't very well defined, but we just trying to scope out the little orange markers, and eventually popped out about 6 a.m. up the top and just got this epic sunrise. Beauty. And some of my favorite sort of shots we've got with Roady, and Marlborough, the tourism board use it all over their content, and we can see why.
That's awesome. Man. So you got Mount Stokes. Where else? With some other hidden gems?
There is Lake Marion, maybe not so hidden, but one of my favourite spots. It's on the road to Milford. If you're leaving from Te Anau to Milford, sort of a 4-hour hike through the bush, and you just pop out at this alpine lake. I think it's like, it also depends on your experience. Like, we had this awesome sunrise mission up Mount Stokes. The day we did Lake Marion, we didn't see a soul. It was during COVID.
True.
So I really enjoyed that. There's the blue pools, or the champagne pools, that are out near where they are out sort of near Turangi Way, that not a lot of people necessarily know about, and we seem to get a little bit of backlash when we put up stuff about that one. It's one of the local spots that
oh really, the locals like don't promote it. Don't get it out there.
We get a little bit of that, not often. It's funny, there's like a couple of spots that always just get the heat. Yeah, the genuine local spots.
Yeah. And how do you go about actually finding these places and putting them on the app? Is it, scathing, or like really scouting through Google and finding places, or like, have you been to every single one of the places on the Roady map? Because you'll be well traveled if you have.
Yeah, no, I certainly haven't, but I guess a lot of it comes from the other side to the business, which has been super strong for us. Pretty much took off as well during COVID, so the self-drive stuff stopped, and because of the audience that we had and the work we were doing in the social media space, we started getting approached by a lot of the tourism boards to go to different regions and essentially shoot destination content for them. So we're shooting photo, video content, and our package always involves like us delivering that content to the tourism board that they're using to promote their region, and then distributing it out through our channels so they can sort of reach our 20 to 35 travel audience. So we're doing a lot of these campaigns, and we still are working with the tourism board. So they want to put on the very best places and all of their sites for us to shoot. And what it enables us to do is it enables us to get photos and videos from all these sites for the app, but also grow our socials and grow our following. And that media space has really been huge for us, because it's kind of like a top of funnel. It's where we get the travelers keen, and then we try and drive them down the funnel to download the app, and where they can have a little bit more functionality to plan their trips.
That's awesome, bro. That's huge. And when it comes to starting and scaling a business, now you've got, 6 employees sitting under you. What has that learning process been like for you, not having sort of technical experience of building an app, now having to manage a team, taking up positions of leadership? You're accountable to make sure that you've got revenue in the door, so you're paying your staff. What has that whole learning process been like for you, bro?
Yeah. I mean, hit the nail on the head there with that, like the management side, because that's been probably the biggest learning. It's like when you're a 1 or 2 man band, you go from doing everything to now where over 50% of my role is managing people, which I love. I think it just comes down to hiring the right people and putting the right people in the right seats. With 6 people, everyone's essentially the head of their department, whether that's content, whether that's development, whether that's finance. So you've got to find the right people that you can trust, and you do put that accountability on them. And I think a big thing for me that I've learned is that you need to have all your staff essentially thinking like a business owner. They all need to be thinking and understanding the business right to the core. So I'm very much a believer that it's not me at the top making decisions. It's we're all making decisions together, and everyone needs to understand why we're making decisions and why their cog is so important to the whole overall company.
That's a really, really good way to put it. I asked this question as well to Israel Whitley, who is the founder and director of Aotearoa Labour Hire, ALH. So that's like a labour hire company. Absolutely smashing it. They've got different sites all across New Zealand. Like, they are just in a crazy position of growth. But when I asked him if he put too much pressure on himself, he said that pressure is a privilege. So just wanted to get what your take is on that, especially as well, being a young guy in this sort of business space. No doubt you put pressure on you, but really keen to hear what your take is on the pressure that you put on yourself and how you manage it.
Yeah. I've certainly got better in recent years around that pressure. Like I think I felt it more so like in my 20s. But for me, I hate letting people down. So my biggest pressure that I put on myself is always, I guess, if cash flow is running a bit low. And as I was saying before, there's this whole thing with startups to grow quickly. So I'm always like, well, I have been taking on investment, hiring people, trying to scale quickly, which obviously at times can mean your cash flow is pretty tight. That's probably when I feel the most pressure. Not that I've ever not been able to pay staff or anything like that, but that would be my worst nightmare, would be falling into a situation like that. So I guess it's just having good systems in place, and I guess your forecasting, your cash flow forecasting, making sure you've got enough leads and enough work coming in the door.
Hard out. Do you, with the business model at the moment, how do you show like the return on investment for people using the app? Potentially, yes, you got the user base, but how do you show like the ROI and stuff to partners? How does the business model sort of work in that regard?
Yeah. So the model for the app at the moment is basically free for the traveller. But if you're a tourism operator, so let's say you're bungee or skydiving or whitewater rafting, you're paying an annual subscription to list on the platform. So it's basically an advertising fee that you're paying to get in front of our audience. The way we show ROI is we've built a portal. So these operators can log on at any time and see their live analytics. So they can see how many people have added it to a bucket list, how many people have ticked it off by going there and uploading a photo, impressions, all that side of things. So I guess, the truth's in the numbers, we're fortunate that we've driven some really good numbers for a lot of operators. Like we've got, a couple on there that have had sort of 300 people go through them. And for a small investment, like it's only $640 to list for the year. And if we're sending that kind of amount of numbers through, they're making that back pretty quickly.
Yeah. That's a no-brainer, eh? Yeah, because I was wondering that within the app, because it is free for the traveler. But seeing how would you track that journey of somebody going to do bungee jumping and going through the app? But is it mainly up to the traveller to list that they have ticked it off their sort of bucket list? Yeah.
So at the moment, we're encouraging people to tick off by uploading a photo. So if you go and do an experience, you take a photo, you tick it off, and then on the app, that will be stored as a pin on your profile, which is a map of New Zealand. So obviously, we'd miss some people with this model that have gone there that just haven't been bothered to upload a photo or whatever. But we have seen a good response, like I said, with sort of over 75,000 in a year. But then once we do integrate the bookings, then obviously we'll be able to work out the exact.
That'd be cool, eh? That'd be awesome. Yeah. Within owning a business as well, how do you identify your blind spots? Because I'm sure that there would have been stages throughout the journey where you're like, shit, okay, maybe I need to get better at like finance, like doing the accounts or people management skills. How do you identify what those blind spots are?
Yeah, good question. I mean, when it comes back to hiring, like I think it's like when you start off with one or two, you work out what you like doing and what you don't like doing, and generally what you like doing is what you're good at doing, and,
Totally.
what you don't want to do is what you're typically bad at. So for me, it's been about like hiring people that can fill those gaps, that could do a 10 times better job than what I could do. I'm very like ideas, creative, love partnerships, love dealing with people. I don't love spreadsheets and forecasting and invoicing and operational stuff. So for me, getting someone in that can take care of that has been huge for me, because it's sort of taken all the stuff I hate doing and allowed me to focus on the stuff I love doing, which makes me 10 times happier.
Yeah, totally. That's good, bro. And what does your standard week look like, bro? Like, have you got like a morning routine? What's like the Monday to Friday?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the morning routine. So the alarm goes off at 5:30. I always start with the gym. So I'll gym Monday to Thursday and rest on a Friday.
Nice.
And then I'll get back from the gym. Sometimes I'll sauna. So I'm big. I love like sauna, cold water immersion, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you kind of got me as a bit of like an ice bath sort of dude. Eh?
I actually had to swim this morning at a Romati, and it was pretty chilly.
That'd be freezing.
yeah. But no, I love that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm a big win the morning, win the day kind of guy. Go into the office in the city, so I'll work in there 4 times a week and work from home 1 day a week.
Yeah.
And then get around the team as much as possible. My work from home day is definitely the day that it's like me time. It's where I smash out all the sort of get into my deep work, and the other days are more collaborative with the team. And then I guess there's a mix with the travel as well. So typically in a month, I'd go on one of our trips. So I might be out on the road for like 7 days. But typically we'd have 2 or 3 trips running. So the other members of the team would be out shooting. Like, it wouldn't be unusual for us to have 2 pods of 2 crew going out on the road shooting at one time.
Yeah, epic, man. And when it comes to the marketing, you mentioned like the tourism boards, but there's so much rich, awesome content, that you can get through travel content, really. Have you guys got like anything that works really well when it comes to your marketing, where maybe you've had to think a bit outside the box?
Yeah. I mean, short form video has just been huge for us. Like, Instagram was at a phase a couple of years back where it was very hard to grow organically. We're, steadily growing with the photos and stuff, but we had these massive banks of video because we were shooting like promo videos for the tourism boards and stuff. So as soon as that hit, and I think it was like during COVID where like TikTok kind of came into
TikTok's fucking crazy, eh? It's like social media crack. It just blows up though with the algorithm. It's nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just started experimenting with TikTok and just like, just putting together these 15-second clips that were getting like 500,000 views, and I was like, insane. Okay, there's something crazy here. I've got to go all in on this, and we did with both Instagram and TikTok, and that's really skyrocketed our growth. Like, for the last, I think, 8 months, we've hit over 1 million. We've reached over 1 million unique accounts on our Instagram and TikTok pages, which is just wild.
That is insane, man. That is insane. Yeah, there's something in the sauce with TikTok. It's like the algorithm just spreads like wildfire.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, I look at TikTok as it's like this like top of funnel reach machine, but Instagram is certainly more like where we've got that tighter knit community or people that have been following the brand for a longer time. But yeah, it's interesting that dynamic. And like, I think back to your thing on like social, it's one thing that's worked for us is just bringing that personal sort of human element. Like, for us, it's never about look at us up this mountain. It's like, here's a couple of people that are enjoying their time up a mountain, and here's the information that you need so that you can go and do it. So it's about that shift. It's not about us. It's actually about the viewer. So giving the viewer as much value as possible and making savable content is huge.
I love that, bro. What's been the biggest challenge that you've been faced with running and setting up Roady so far?
Biggest challenge. I mean, it is fairly challenging, I guess, not having that technical background like in the early days, because you've just got no benchmark to go off when you're, I can't put my head in the code and have a look at what's under the hood and
true.
and be able to contribute to that. So I mean, yeah, getting the right people again, getting a developer that you can trust. But I guess that's been one challenge. The capital raising thing has been a challenge. Like I feel like, and you talk to any founder that's raising capital, it's an ongoing thing, and you feel like you're constantly pitching. So I guess that's one thing I've learned. Like we did a round called a convertible note, where it's kind of a bridging round in between two equity rounds, where you're asking your investors to essentially give you a bit of a loan, and you're paying them interest on it until the next round. Potentially wouldn't do that again. Like I feel like it was kind of, when you do a capital raise, you want to create a bit of urgency around jumping in, and it was like we had this loan open, sort of jump in when you want, and it just dragged a little bit. So there's a few things I do differently with the capital raising.
True. And are you constantly, like you mentioned, you're going into sort of like equity rounds? So is that something that you'll continue doing throughout the sort of Roady life cycle? Is continuing to get more investors on board? Yeah,
potentially. Like I mean, if we keep growing, certainly, like it could be a case of doing like 4 or 5 rounds up until over a 10-year period, for example. But my big priority at the moment is to just get to profitable, get to that break even point, and become more self-sufficient, rather than just keep taking on capital, just because of the climate of investment as well, and it is more tricky to raise than it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, totally. And what's the end goal with Roady? You mentioned you guys will be expanding over to Australia, so that'll be to set up like a similar model to what's in place in New Zealand. If you look 10 years down the track, what is Roady doing and what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, 10 years down the track, I'd love to see Roady be the #1 travel app when you think of planning or finding things to do. We're basically trying to fill that gap of, like, you've got TripAdvisor at the moment that's probably a slightly older demographic using that, and we're trying to be the kind of millennial Gen Z TripAdvisor that's more visual, more inspirational. So I'd love for Roady to be in a range of countries all over the world and be the one that you go into your pocket when you're in a new country and you're going, what can I do today?
It's awesome, bro. It's so sick, eh? And like, seriously, if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't got Roady on your phone, download it right now, because it will I think you're right. It's like there's so much cool shit to do in our country, but finding all of those cool opportunities and exactly where to go and where to drive and how to get there, that's what has been missing. And it's all been done through basically like Chinese whispers prior to something like Roady. You hear from a mate like, oh, there's a real cool waterhole, you got to drive this back road, but to actually have it all in one spot where you can access is just an absolute game changer, man.
Cheers. Yeah. Like when I had the idea, we spent so much time on validation and just talking to people about how they currently go about planning travel, and the same answers popped up so many times. As like a bit of Googling, bit of social media, and then how do you make the itinerary? Well, make a Google Doc or a Google Sheet and start putting things in, and then use Google Maps to kind of try and find these places. And it's, like I was saying, it's so fragmented. So our goal is to kind of bring that all together and just make it super easy on an app.
Totally. And do you think there's room for like expansion outside of like Australia? If you hit like Europe or something, is there similar offerings out there, or?
There doesn't seem to be anything like directly like Roady. There's other apps around, but certainly that's the plan, is to get over to Europe. We've had some interest from people that have come over and used the app in New Zealand that have like loved their experience, and we've had requests of would you be open to like franchising it? And like there's one guy from Ireland, one guy from Sri Lanka, one guy from Canada that had similar sort of ideas. So yeah, I mean, franchising is not necessarily in the pipeline, but expanding to some of those countries is. Yeah.
You're so true. I got a mate that I work with, called Joe, and he's going over to Eastern Europe shortly for like a honeymoon with his wife now, and like he was showing me. I was like, oh, cool, man. Where you going? Like, what have you got planned for the trip? And you're right. He opened up like the Excel spreadsheet, and it's like all of these countries. He's done some pretty amazing planning for it. But yeah, it would be so much easier if it was all just through an app.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why we want to bring the bookings in and just make it all on one page.
100%. when things get stressful or you're under, we talked about pressure earlier, but I'm real keen to unpack, how do you get past stressful moments? Have you got things or people to speak to, or, what do you do personally when the going gets really tough?
I think the first thing is to sort yourself out. You can't pour from an empty cup. So I get into the toolkit, which for me looks like exercise, making sure I'm exercising, making sure I'm eating well. Like I say, I love my saunas and cold water immersion, getting my mornings right. What else do I enjoy? I've recently actually started dabbling in meditation, which is
Cool,
something completely different for me. Yoga, I do yoga every Wednesday morning. So I try and prioritize that sort of stuff to keep the head clear. Those would be like the main things that I do, as well as speaking to people. Fortunate now that I've got a bunch of like really great mentors that I can kind of go to for anything, and different people for different sort of areas, which is great. I definitely sort of tap into that. Our office is shared with 3 other companies, and it's a really great like collaborative space for a lot of people that companies that are a couple of years or 5 years ahead of where Roady's at. So there's a lot of people there that you can kind of tap into that have been through and solved a lot of the problems that you're trying to solve.
That's super cool. And so you've got like a good relationship with other people, other founders in the office?
Yeah. Like one of the CEOs of another company, Tour Rider, their CEO Glenn is also an investor and on our board in Roady. So nice. He's just on the other side of the office, so I bug him a little bit when there's
yeah. So, oh no, Roscoe's dressed again. He's like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit more about entering or practicing a bit more like meditation? That's something I've never done before, something I'm pretty keen to give a crack. How does it work? What do you do?
Yeah. I'm certainly no expert. Like this is probably a 10-month thing.
Yep.
I started off with using like Headspace, like an app, just like with no experience. I wanted to kind of get a feel for it, and that was really helpful. Like sort of explained what it's about, and like one thing that I found really interesting was that like meditation is not necessarily just for yourself, but it's for all the other people that are important to you, because through doing meditation you become better around with your interactions around other people, which I really liked. And I think it's like my mind is so busy, like 100 miles an hour with ideas and stuff. So for me it's like taking 10 minutes in the morning or at night, sometimes before bed, to just not think about anything and really clear the mind. I've noticed like in the morning, just prior to doing it and prior to getting a good morning routine, you're rushing out the door, you're jumping on a train, and you're just not set up for a good day in the office. So if you can sort of start the day calm and it's helped me be a lot more present with people and my interactions with other people.
That's awesome, bro. That's so cool. Yeah, I definitely need to give it a crack, eh? Like I've heard so many people, like I've never heard anyone say like I've picked up doing meditation once or twice a week and I've hated it. Like no one, I don't think anyone's ever said that, right?
Yeah, it's funny, because you start it and you're like, am I doing this right? Like, but there's no like correct way to do it.
Yeah.
And now like I'll do it in different ways, like chuck on some like real super chill music and like don't do the guided stuff as much anymore. But yoga's another form of in the same boat for me. Like it's a time where I just clear the mind and just like have a stretch and just like always walk away from it feeling a million times better.
100%, bro. Yeah, finding those things in your life. I think like physical activity is just so important for like your mental health. It is massive. I was at jiu-jitsu on Saturday, and there's rolls from like 10 to 12 o'clock, and I was having a break, just having a coffee and stuff, and it's full mat. There's so many people there. And I was like, I'm not a religious person. I'm like, this is basically like church. Like this is for the people here. This is like church. This is like some spiritual, sacred place where we come and try and strangle each other for 2 hours. But, and you walk out of doing jiu-jitsu and rolling up for like 2 hours. It's just like, how could your day get any worse? Like, you've kind of had to overcome every single obstacle over that 2 hour period. So you just leave it feeling on such a high, eh? It's awesome.
Absolutely. And your phone's in your bag, you're literally just thinking about being there, doing your practice. There's no distractions. which is so important, I think.
It's massive, eh? Have you tried one of those flotation tanks before?
I have once, yeah.
They're pretty strange, eh?
Yeah.
I've done that once as well, and I think the first time, and for people who don't know what it is, it's there's a whole bunch of like Epsom salts in the water. You're basically in this like dome, and the water is at the same body temperature, is at the same temperature as your body temperature, so it doesn't really feel like you're even in water, eh? It's a surreal experience.
I think I cocked mine up a bit because the water's so salty. I touched my eyes and I was like burning. It's kind of ruined my experience a little bit, but no, I'm certainly into it. I haven't been back. I think like I love massages as well, and I'm going to pay like $80-100. I'd probably rather get a massage.
100%. It's I feel like with the flotation tanks, it's one of those things where it takes a while to get used to. You're like, man, this is such an alien experience. Like, you're basically naked in this water in this dome by yourself, and you keep like touching the sides. Your hand touches the sides. It's like shit. Super strange.
Hard out.
Are you really big within Roady and the team that you manage around perhaps not like forcing people to do exercise, but is that like basically a part of your culture as well? Do you encourage your staff members to sort of go out there and look after their mental health? And if it is, yoga or exercise or going for a walk, do you have like flexibility around that stuff?
Yeah, certainly. Like try to make sure that everyone's getting out at lunchtime, because I even myself find sometimes it gets to 5 o'clock, I'm like, shit, I've never left the office. Like, and you walk out and you're like, sunlight.
Blinded.
But I think, Roady kind of naturally attracts those kind of people for the job anyway, because you want people that are interested in what we're doing, which involves the outdoors and getting out. So it certainly isn't something that I've had to force upon people. It comes pretty naturally to the crew.
Yeah, that's nice. And what about you as a leader, bro? Because now you're running a business with 6 people under you. Have you learned any like really direct lessons in leadership along the way, and what are they?
Good question. Leadership. I think it's back to what I was saying before, like that whole like idea of like letting go and bringing people in on the journey. So I mean, for example, all those employees have a stake in the company. We have what's called ESOP, where basically every employee has a percentage of the company that they'll work for over a set period of time. So it might be like 3 years, and they might own 3% of Roady at the end of those 3 years, or they have the option to essentially buy those shares in the company, which makes them obviously more invested in what we're doing. And it's not like to replace salary. It's to give them a stake, and what that means is that every time we're talking about anything to do with the company, it's completely open. Our board meetings are completely open to everyone in the company, so everyone's invited. There's no skeletons. I'm just completely transparent with where we are with revenue, with sales, with everything, and I feel like everyone needs to know that. And I feel like you, especially at such an early stage, you want everyone to buy in, and to do that, everyone needs to understand the company back to front.
That's really nice, eh? Just having that level of transparency for everyone. Like, I remember my first job, I worked in for a charity, for a not-for-profit, and just a tough time, probably similar size to what Roady is, but I remember our chief executive sitting us down and being like, this is what the next 6 months could look like. Option A is we land these funders, we get, this revenue through the door and things are all right. Option B is we leave, we lose 3 staff. Option C is we go insolvent. We have to close shop. And like just being privy to that conversation, I was like 19 at the time, 20. I was like, holy shit. But that transparency just meant so much, because it wasn't like you were finding out that you're in a shit situation 3 months down the track and there's nothing you can do about it. We got flagged how the sort of forecast was looking quite early on due to having that good like open door policy, and that just meant like a world of difference for people. And people have got mortgages and families and stuff like that too. So yeah, real important, eh?
Nah, for sure.
Yeah, it's massive. What is one thing you'd like to accomplish before you die, bro? You seem like an absolute go-getter, so I'm sure there's like what is on your bucket list? You do lots of bucket list things for other people through Roady around their experiences. What are the 3 things on Roscoe's bucket list?
Like travel related? or
Just general life related.
oh man, 3 things. Travel related, I'll give you one. I'd like to go to Antarctica at some point.
That'd be sick.
That's on the list. What else would I like to accomplish? I guess I want to leave the travel space in a better place than when I found it. And for me, what that really means is better experiences for people. I want people to be more connected to the place that they're visiting, both by understanding the culture, but also by leaving a better imprint on the environment. So I think what I'm trying to achieve with Roady is, I want to get to a place where travel's positive, not just from a financial perspective that we're putting more money into an economy. It's, we're actually leaving a place better than we found it by, traveling with positive emissions. So how do we get to that point? I think offsetting on planes shouldn't be a button that you click. I think that should be pretty mandatory and built into the price. And that's sort of where I'm trying to get with Roady, with like the booking side, is that eventually that's into the price, and people are essentially traveling carbon positive.
Nice.
Have I got one more?
Let's go.
So that's a Roady thing, and then I guess, the last year would just be like a personal one. I just want to, leave with, build a family one day, and leave the world with being looked at as a great husband, father, and just family man.
That's beautiful, bro. I really like that, eh? And you're recently-ish married, eh?
January, yeah.
Nice, man. Congrats. How's that whole journey been?
It's been awesome. Yeah. No, the wedding got pushed back a year. So, wedding was a COVID wedding, and it was kind of going to be like, oh, are we going ahead? How many people can we have? And we just decided, no, we don't want it like big day to be impacted. So we pushed it out a year, which is best decision ever. Yeah. Able to pretty much drag and drop everything we'd organised, and epic wedding in Hawke's Bay.
That's cool, man. Were you nervous? I'll be shitting bricks. I'm obviously not married, but whenever I think about it, and I've got some friends that are starting to get on that journey now, I just think of like how scared I would be, like doing the engagement, proposing, but also just like the stress with like the marriage, but also really beautiful at the same time.
There were certainly nerves. I had an interesting one with the engagement. So I was also up in the Hawke's Bay, but the ring didn't arrive in time. So
you're kidding.
I had to have the old man. We were staying in Waimarama on the beach, and the old man had to drop the ring at like 5:30 in the morning, and I sort of snuck out. Told Shara I was going to check out if it was a good sunrise, and grabbed the ring, and I was like, come on, let's go for a walk. Had the dog, so like,
did it fit?
Go for a walk
On your finger?
Yeah, fit.
Okay.
But on the beach in Waimarama, and then I invited all her close mates and my close mates up, and we walked out for lunch, and there's 20 odd people there for a surprise lunch, so that was pretty special.
That's lovely, bro. That's super cool. And what's it like for your wife? Like, how much of a support is she with you and your business and what you're up to?
Oh yeah, massively. I'd struggle to do what I do without her support. I'm sort of off on a lot of trips, and she's holding down the fort, looking after the dog.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, she's certainly my rock. So very fortunate to have her.
That's me, bro. Massive shout outs to your partner. Yeah, they're such like integral pieces of the puzzle when it comes to people's life and like the success where people are. And I'm sure you support her just as much as she supports you. Such a massive part of the puzzle, eh?
Yeah, she's actually just started a little makeup company. Doing a lot of wedding makeup and events makeup and stuff. So it's cool to sort of see her have her own thing now as well, and be able to support her with that. And it's definitely given her a sort of a new lease on life. So
man, that's
cool to see.
Far out, pretty successful couple you guys have there, budding business owners. That's epic. We'll wrap up with some quick fire questions, then we'll end with a bit of a quote. But before we do so, where can people stay in touch with you and your mahi?
So Roady's just at Roady NZ across pretty much every social platform: Insta, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. All my personals, just Roscoe Price Moor. And then the app is on Apple or Google Play. And if you just search Roady, you'll find it.
There, bro. And we'll chuck links into the description wherever you're watching or listening to the potty. Roscoe, what brings you true happiness?
What brings me true happiness? Family, friends, sun, the beach, exercise, swimming, travel. Yeah, I think it's just a combination of doing my favorite things, and it's that whole expectation thing. It's like, just not putting expectations on anything, and I think what's that quote? It's like if your expectation is outweighed by, I'm butchering this, but you know where I'm going with
Yeah. That's good. I like the one. What is it? Shit, I'm having a blank on a quote right now. It's fuck. I'll come back to it. It'll come back to me. This is the worst promo for quotes. Hey, Jesus. Advice you wish you knew about when you were younger.
Probably just to not put so much pressure on yourself. Like in the early phase, I think, you kind of feel like you should have it figured out when that's not really a thing. And I guess on the other side of that, it's to just enjoy the process and celebrate the small wins. I think that's huge. Like, and it's something that I haven't done enough. It's like, because Roady's moving at such a fast pace, you get one win and then you're just on to the next one. It's like actually taking time to celebrate the small wins, because, you'll find that what you achieve is pretty hectic, but you just gloss over it. So, I think that's pretty huge.
And you're on to the next thing, eh? And just take that time to smell the roses. Remember the quote as well, comparison is the thief of joy. I love that.
There we go. Yeah.
I knew it would come to me. What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy. It comes back to that whole travel thing, leaving the travel world in a better place. And I think, travel should always have a positive effect on a place. So that would be in the travel space. And then I guess, I'd like to be remembered as, again, a great family man, and someone that was, positive and good to be around.
Epic, bro. If you could change one thing in New Zealand, what would this be?
Probably, like just the whole tall poppy syndrome space. And I mean, I'm talking about this from experience, but not really for myself. Like, I've got a great group of friends and I haven't really necessarily experienced it myself, but I have seen it, and I think it is prevalent in New Zealand, and I think it stops a lot of people from doing what they want to do and putting themselves out there because they're worried about being chopped down. So I think changing that culture would be up there.
100%. Couldn't agree more, man. What do you believe is the main thing that is holding back young people in New Zealand?
I guess on a similar note, probably like scared of failure, which might come hand in hand with the tall poppy thing. Like, I think a lot of people are scared to make mistakes, scared to fail. And I think it's just really important that you start, like, the first thing you do, your first product, your first podcast, your first whatever, you're going to look back on and go, man, that wasn't my best or whatever. But it's just about taking action. I feel you just got to do it and learn from those mistakes. And I think there's a big decision paralysis. I think it's make decisions quickly, learn from them, and move on to the next one.
100%. Couldn't agree more, man. I remember starting the podcast. I brought all of the equipment, like mics, got the interface and stuff there. I literally just sat holding this stuff for 6 months. And I didn't do anything. I was like, I had the idea, had all the gears, could have pressed go, but I was like, shit, how will people perceive the podcast? And you're right, if you're sort of chasing perfection the whole time, it can sort of stop or stagnate how fast you can move on things, eh?
Oh, perfection's such a killer. Yeah.
So true, man.
I mean, been on a few podcasts and you've done bloody well. This is a pretty profesh setup, so
cheers,
good on
bro.
you.
Fake it till you make it. Cool, we'll finish on a quote from Steve Jobs. People think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that there are. You have to pick carefully.